Shabbat Shalom. We'll begin this evening with the Ma Tovu, and following along in the Siddur on page 101, Ma Tovu is a statement of a quality of goodness that emerges from homes being joined together, households being bound one to the next. So, although traditionally recited in the morning service, the Ma Tovu tonight calls out to me, and I'm sharing with you Ma Tovu, and it's sung by a woman named Mary Ariane. Ma Tovu. The last two words, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, are speaking to us. Mishkan means a sanctuary. Mishkanotecha, all of your sanctuaries, Yisrael, O Israel. And you and I can see in our own minds many different homes that are being brought together, each home rendered a Mishkan, a sanctuary. Your home, and our shul, every home throughout. Consider what it means for a home to be transformed into a sanctuary and for a synagogue to be the epicenter of many miniature sanctuaries. The Shalom Aleichem on page number 5. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Volachem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon, mi-melech, malachei amlochim, ha-kadosh baruch hu. Baruch Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon, mi-melech, malachei amlochim, ha-kadosh baruch hu. On page 11, the psalm begins with Lechunu Ranana, which means, come on, folks, let's all sing together. And tonight, we're welcoming a recording of a temple choir from Scottsdale, Arizona. It's called Temple High. Lechunu Ranana on page number 11.
Lechunu Ranana, Lechunu Ranana, Lechunu Ranana. Suri shenu nikadma fanav bitoda. Naria letsuri shenu bismirot naria lo. Lechunderanena ladonai. Lechunderanena ladonai. Naria letsuri shenu nikadma fanav bitoda. Naria letsuri shenu bismirot naria lo. Lechunderanena ladonai. Lechunderanena ladonai.
And on page 12, on the English side, if only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Merivah, like that time at Massah in the desert when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are our people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way. So in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. And now we turn to L'chadodi on page number 23. On page 23, the first two stanzas, page 25, the last two stanzas, L'chadodi.
לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. 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 שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Page 25. Yaminu small tifrotzi v'et Adonai taritzi al yarish ben partzi v'netzmecha v'nagila lecha dodi lekrat kala p'nei shabbat nekabela lecha dodi לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי קלה, בואי קלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. And as we're seated, we remember that Shabbat has joined us. Shabbat has come into the room because we've called out to her, because we've been singing to her. And I should mention, over the past months, we've had people joining in on the internet from Israel, from different parts of Europe, from Ukraine at one point, from the Philippines, from Mexico, tonight from Puerto Vallarta. People are joining in with us because we are welcoming them, as Shabbat herself has been made welcome by our presence. Think of the power of that. And every one of us has that capacity to make people feel welcome. On page 27, guest cantor Marcia Tilchin, and she'll begin with page 27, then continue on onto page number 28 on the Hebrew.
Tov lehodot l'Adonai ulizamer l'shimcha elyon leagid baboker chastecha ve'emunatecha balelot alei asur v'alei novel alei ברכתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך רנן. איש בר לא ידע וכסיל לא יבין את זאת, בפרוח רשעים כמו עשב ויציצו כל פועלי אבן, להישמדם עדי יד. ותביט עיני בשורי, בקמים עלי מרים תשמענה אוזני. צדיק אתה אמר יברח, כארז בלבנון יזכה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו, כל ילוד בשיבה, ושנים ברעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי צורי ולא אתה בא.
Rising the Borchu on page number 39B. Page 39B. Baruchu et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Hanam Barach Le'olam Voed. We are seated, please joining together, the English page 39B. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space. You completed your work of creation on the seventh day, calling this day from one evening to the next, the holy Shabbat, and gave this day of rest in all its holiness to your people Israel, creator of day and night, ruling light before darkness and darkness from light, making day pass and bringing on the evening, distinguishing day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah, who brings each evening's dusk. El Chai Bekayam, Tamid Yimloch Le'olam Voed, Baruch Atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. I'm thinking about this passage. We say this every single week, and we don't really speak of it. What does it mean? The last two words, Hama'ariv Aravim, are repetitious because the blessing is excited. The blessing is excited about their transition from day into evening. The Hebrew word for evening is erev, spelled with an ayin, resh, vet. People are familiar with the term erev Shabbat or erev Yom Tov. Erev means evening. Ma'ariv is the verb to make evening. Aravim is a noun, evenings, plural. So literally we just said, blessed are you God who makes evening evenings, or makes evening every evening. Don't take for granted the sun that's 93 million miles away, warming our world and keeping us alive, and then at the right moment, transitioning into nightfall so you and I can start to calm and rest. And the next bracha on page 40 reminds us that all of creation, all of nature is here as an expression of God's love for us. Page 40. With timeless love, you have loved your people, the house of Israel. You have taught us Torah and mitzvot, statutes and laws. Therefore, Adonai, our God, as we lie down and as we rise up, we shall speak of your laws, rejoicing in the words of your Torah and your mitzvot forever and ever. For they are our life and the fullness of our days, and on them we shall meditate day and night. Do not ever withdraw your love from us. Baruch Atah, who loves the people Israel. V'avotecha al tasir mimenu li'olamim. Baruch Atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Page 41. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha v'hayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'beitecha, u'v'alektecha v'aderech, u'v'shachtacha b'kumecha, u'kishartam le'ot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'v'sharecha. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Mi Chamocha on page 44. Mi Chamocha Poelim Adonai. Mi Chamocha Nedar B'Kodesh Norati Lot Osei Fele Malchutecha Ra'uvanecha Bokeh Yam Lifnei Moshe Zeli Anuv Yamro Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed V'ne'emar Ki Fadarna Et Yaakov Ugalo Mi'ar Chazal Mimeno Baruch Ata Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Turning to page 45, looking at the right-hand side of the page, there's a marginal note explaining a difference between Ashkenazic and Sephardic versions of the Hashkivenu. It's the second little marginal note down on page number 45. Remove from us, the Hebrew is V'haseret me'aleinu, and if you look at the actual prayer on the page, it says some omit on Shabbat in red italics. And so now looking at the marginal note on the right-hand side. Some Sephardic rites follow the custom of changing the weekday liturgy to accord with the spirit of Shabbat. Accordingly, they remove the line, quote, remove from us enemies and pestilence, sword, starvation, close quote, not wanting to even mention on Shabbat sources of evil that might direct our attention away from the peacefulness of Shabbat. So they just remove it from the Siddur on Friday night. Ashkenazic authorities, however, feared that if the liturgy changed on Shabbat from the daily version of the Hashkivenu, congregants would be confused as to the proper language, and they would stop saying the prayer because they wouldn't know what to do. So Ashkenazim kept that phrase. So here we are in Shabbat, and we're calling out for peace in the entire world, beginning with your life and your home. And we are attuned to the need of having peace in our own experience and also the reality far beyond our own home life where there is war and suffering. On our Shabbat, we are recognizing we're bringing the world into our own experience. That's the power of the Hashkivenu. On the English side, the last 5 lines on page 45. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch Atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people of Israel, and over Jerusalem. Ufro salenu sukat shlomecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, hapares sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. And the guest cantor, Debbie Bletstein, joins us for V'shamru, the top of page 46.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ביני ובין בני ישראל השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבו, ופנה בחייכון וביומכון, ובחייך בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה, ובזמן קריב במהרה אמן. יהי שמי רבו מבורך, לעולם לעולמי עולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקדושה ברכו לעילם. לכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא במהרה amen. If you look at the first line on page 47, it's in slightly smaller print than the main prayer of the Amidah. Adonai Sevatai Tiftach, literally, O God, open my lips. Ufi Yagiti Yotecha, let my lips speak praises about you. Let my lips do the talking. This is a phrase from the book of Psalms. It's not part of the Amidah. It was placed here as kind of a kickstart to remind us that each and every one of us has to open with personal words, personal thoughts, personal reflections in order to get the Amidah going. The pages before us, from 47 to 52, have been handed down for 1,800 years. They're our inheritance. Our ancestors in numerous countries at numerous times said these exact same words. So if that speaks to you and it's compelling that you wish to repeat their words echoing their sentiments in your own idea, your own way, do so. But if also you can summon up your own thought, your own idea, bless you, then do so. We rise to silent prayer. Turning to page 51, Shalom Rav, also by Cantor Debbie Bletstein. Shalom Rav, the concluding bracha of the Amida, a prayer for great peace throughout the world. Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata umelech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata Shalom, Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim
Full Kaddish is on page 54. Yitkara Vidkara Shemei Rabba Belfimru Amen Yehe Shemei Rabba Mevarach Alam Yalmei Almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach Vishtabach Yitparnas David Arar Vedadir Hashmei Kudisha Brechu Leila Mekabsimru Amen Tikabel Sullivan Shmiru Amen Yeshua Amen Osesham Ramavia Seshalom Osvimero Amen. I have a story to share, a story not of my own, but a story shared with me from a man named Arthur. First, a little bit of background. I've mentioned over the past number of months that I've been welcomed into a group named Faith in Action, primarily a group consisting of African American pastors and lay people. And there are a few white people in this fairly large group. And needless to say, I'm the only Jewish person. And it means a great deal that the door has been opened wide to welcome me. And I'm learning and listening, and I think they're learning and listening too. And one of the goals of this group is to marshal people on the ground to promote voter registration. But I think a meta element of this organization is to bring people together of different backgrounds. And now a story shared with me a little while ago from one of the gentlemen. His name is Arthur. And he leads a ministry, as he calls it, but he also has, as he calls it, a day job. And he works in a business, a local business, an office, and he's a supervisor. And some time ago, a customer came into the business and needed to be addressed, but he refused to wear a mask. And it's the policy at this business that everybody entering the building has to wear a mask. And so people in the lower level of the office kept speaking to him, put on a mask, and he was getting more and more irate. And finally, Arthur, the supervisor, was brought into the experience. And Arthur was very calm and very polite, and he was speaking to the gentleman, and the man was getting more and more irate. And as Arthur shares the story with me, he paused, and he opened himself to receiving a gift of peace from God. And then he chose to continue to be very calm and very polite, saying, "Sir, I'm sorry I cannot serve you unless you have a mask. And this went back and forth for some time, and the gentleman, the customer, got very, very angry, and he stormed out, as Arthur tells me the story, and he came back in a few minutes later wearing a mask, wearing a Confederate flag mask. And you know, of course, now Arthur is an African American. And so, of course, he did this, we surmise, intentionally to get at Arthur. But as Arthur shared the story with me, he had already received this message, this sense of, I need to bring peace into this experience. And so he continued to be polite and welcome, and he addressed the customer's concerns, which had brought the customer into the business in the first place, and he was calm and polite. And as they began talking more and more, as the customer's situation was being resolved, they began to be more calm together. And at one point, they began to have a little bit of a chuckle and a joke back and forth. And one of them used the word brother, and the other one used the word brother. And after a time, the customer left the business, and as Arthur shared the story with me, he called me brother. There's much that we can learn from this experience of Arthur, an African American who in these days and age could have seen the experience as being accosted by a man wearing a battle mask, but instead he was willing to open himself up, as he called it, seeking a gift of peace from God. And it occurs to me that we Jews already have that. You've heard the Shalom Rav. We'll be concluding with Oseh Shalom. We already had Oseh Shalom once. Our system, our liturgy, our mindset is filled with, we are to welcome the message of peace into our lives every single day. Are you and I able to be a little bit like Arthur? In moments of conflict with people within our daily lives, some people who are intentionally trying to get us to get at our goats, are we able to open ourselves up to what is our tradition and our heritage and our legacy, to welcome a sense of peace and then to share that sense of peace in our daily lives? Not eliminating war in the Ukraine, but promoting a sense of reduced stress, one person at a time. If Arthur, an African American, could respond to an irate white person wearing a Confederate battle flag who was doing so intentionally, are you and I able to respond to people in our own life experiences who are trying to do something to get at us? Will we be strong enough to not be baited? Will we be strong enough to emulate Arthur? I hope so. I'm going to take hold of that and try to bring that into my life. We rise the Aleinu on page number 56. Aleinu is on page 56. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanik goyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, Vanachnu korim, mishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlochim, hakadosh baruch hu, shehu noteh shamayim yosed aretz, Moshav Yekaro Bashamayim Mimal Ushchinatu Zol Begave Meromim Hu Eloheinu Enod Emet Malkeinu Efezulatom Kakatuv Betoratom Vyodata Yom Vashevota Elvavecha Ki Adonai Hua Elohim Bashamayim Mimal V'al Haaretz Mitochot Enod. Kakatu b'Torah techo Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad Ushema Echad. The Morris Kaddish in a moment on page number 58. On this Shabbos, we all remember with great love Jacob Joseph Ratner, Polly Kramer, Esther Grossman Cohen, Katie Enton, Vi Burton, Samuel J. Friedman, Fanny Rips Meisler, Agnes Tenenbaum, Rebecca Peretz, Rose Gottlieb, Isaac Friedman, Florence Stiebel, Rose Walters, Herman Finch, Nellie Idelson, Larry Michelle, Ethel Maisel, David Maisel, Reverend Simon Burson, John Webster Jr., Kay Podem, Madeline Fass. Are there any other names to mention tonight? Perhaps a name mentioned at home as well? Page 58. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. Amen. Be'olma divara chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chaye chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mivarach la'olam al'olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shaloma Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. We think we know something of the Kaddish's origin. As you know, Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, these are Aramaic words. the first 90% of this was Aramaic, and it was composed. And it probably ended with Yehei Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya, and that was the end. And then perhaps at a certain point in time, a little bit later, someone chose to add Oseh Shalom B'Romav, Hebrew, to the Kaddish. Why? Because although this was composed in Babylon 2,000 years ago, and the language of the day was Aramaic, I think they wanted to call out to the ancient roots of our identity, which are Hebrew. And they wanted to say something that they knew. It's fairly simple Hebrew. Let there be peace, not just in the heavens, but upon us. That's Oseh Shalom. And so they glued Oseh Shalom to the Yehei Shlomo Rabba piece. We all need to have that message. Not only the message of our vocabulary, in this case English, but the message that comes back from thousands of years ago at our very beginning. And we also need that doubled message. May there be peace upon all who grieve and mourn. We'll conclude in a moment with Kiddush and Motzi. And just a couple of reminders, of course. Services tomorrow morning, and Zoom Havdalah, and Monday is Tanakh study, and Tuesday is Adult Hebrew on Zoom, and Tuesday Spirit. Next Friday is Guitar Shabbat. We're excited. Yehuda's going to be here for Guitar Shabbat. Woo-hoo! And we're excited about that, and we're looking forward to seeing people in person. We'll conclude with, pardon me, Oseh Shalom. This is Steve Dropkin, and then Kiddush and Motzi, and perhaps those joining in at home will have wine and bread prepared so we can all have Kiddush together. But for now, we'll conclude with Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom B'Romav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Be'hakol ve'hakol Yisrael, Be'yimeru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Romav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Be'hakol ve'hakol Yisrael, Be'imru Imeru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Romav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Be'hakol ve'hakol Yisrael, Be'imeru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Romav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Be'hakol ve'hakol Yisrael, שלום במרומה. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו והכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו והכל ישראל ואמרו עמנו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו.
In Kiddush on page 55, you have a glass of wine or grape juice. And if so able, people invited to rise for Kiddush. And perhaps you're joining at home for Kiddush as well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'yava'u v'ratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim givanu v'charta v'yotanu kirashta mikol ha'amim v'shavat kodshecha v'yahava v'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai v'kadesh ha-Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I hope you know how important you are. You're a blessing from God and you're loved. Until we see each other soon, Litrot, Shabbat Shalom.